Welcome to my channel. Today we have a mixed media napkin tutorial. We're going to make not one, not two, not three, but 4 home decor items out of one napkin. So here is the napkin. It is called Birdbox, and you can get this at NINNYSNAPKINS. The link is in the description box below, along with the discount code. So out of this one napkin, I am going to make 4 home decor items. So first off, I am going to watercut the image. I'm just removing some of the white papers, the excess, getting kind of torn edges in there. Saving some elements that I may not want for this, but I may be using at a later date within this project or another napkin project. So project 1, we're going to decorate this metal bucket. So this metal bucket I got at the end of the season. It had some snowman on it or something. I sanded it down and I applied 2 layers of Kills 2. Now I want this napkin's bright colors to show, so I am going to decoupage this down with my fluid matte medium right onto the white of the tin and then deal with painting the background. So I put the matte medium underneath and then on top. Now, if things rip, as it is here, you can easily place it back on and get it in place. And no one is the wiser. I love, love, love the bright, cheery colors of this napkin. That's what drew me to it. So after it dries, I'm just cutting off the excess and I'm saving that excess because you never know when you can use it. Pressing it down. Now I'm applying the same part of the napkin on the other side of the bucket. I played around with putting 4 all the way around and chose not to. I wanted some open space. At this time, I wasn't sure if I was going to put some kind of sentiment or words on here, and all that will be revealed. I'm using a flat brush and it has softer bristles. I'm not using my usual glue brush that is all hard. Now, along the bottom of the bucket, I wanted some more of these flowers. So I am taking off the flowers from another section of the napkin. And that's with the joy. You can take the pieces that you want. And I'm going to fill in this gap on either side. So along the bottom, we have this floral motif. Now, the reason I didn't paint the background of this can blue like I'm going to before I put the napkin down is I wanted the colors to stay bright. And I was afraid that if I put a blue background, it would mute the colors a little bit. And of course, I want to try something a different way. If you want to see, I have put in the iCards a link to all my napkin tutorials, and you can see the various ways that I do napkins. Most of the time, I've done the background before I put the napkin down. And when you're piecing little parts together, once it's dry, it's seamless. So I grab out some gel prints and I'm auditioning the backgrounds. I want to see what color background really works well with my desired focal image. And that's a good way of using your scrapbook papers or your gel prints to help you decide what color. And I decide that I'm going to use blue, light blue permanent here. And I'm going to introduce a little bit of the quinacridone magenta to bring the pink and the purple that's in the flowers into the sky. I start by applying this with a makeup sponge and a brush to get into those small areas. I'm working my way right up to the edge of the napkin and into the napkin. Adding different colors, a little bit of green, a little bit of teal, just to make it the background interesting. It's going to be relatively plain, but I didn't want it to be one tone. I had left those little leaf parts on there, and I wish I hadn't because in the end they get pushed, they pretty much disappear. I would have cut a lot closer to the birdhouses. But your plans change. So here I'm introducing the quinacridone magenta into the background. And that's just kind of modeling it up, and any imperfections that are there, the edges of the napkins, seems to disappear when you do that, as opposed to just having one flat color. So getting a fine brush and getting into the background. Now I'm rubbing more quinacridone magenta on, rubbing it in with my fingers, and I'm just playing with the colors till I like what I see. And there was a lot of playing. Wanted to add a little bit more interest in the background, and there were some dots on some of these houses. So I'm using the quinacridone magenta and this shelf liner and stamping these little circles on the can. And while I like the circles, I found it a little bit too stark. So I just took a makeup sponge with a little white paint and I just pushing it back, kind of a wash, and pushing it into the background. It's also kind of making it look like clouds, which I'm loving. Now I'm doing a little bit of shading on the birdhouses to make them stand out. And I'm using the floating acrylic technique here. Just adding a little bit of shading, a little bit of highlighting. Then I decide I want some white dots on the background as well. And between the white dots and the magenta dots and the mottled background, the edges of where the napkins end and the tin can begins disappear. And it really camouflages any irregularities. And it makes the bucket really interesting. And I'm loving, loving, loving the background now. Then I decide I want to give it a contrasting rim. So I grab the magenta and I'm shading along the bottom and I paint that top rim, that magenta color, which turns purple because of the blue underneath. But you definitely could have left it blue if that's your preference. And we're done project one. So it was the next day I decided that, I have some pieces left. I'm going to try some other ideas for backgrounds with them. So these are the pieces left. So I grabbed this wooden door hanger and a 4x4 canvas magnet. And I decided I'm going to see what I can do with this. So now that I know what I'm going to use, I'm using this piece. Remember, I cut off the flowers from this one and used it on the tin can, on the metal can or bucket. And now I'm just cutting it a little bit closer. I want to get rid of as much of that as possible. I learned from my previous experience that I didn't like that. And here I'm just editing out this birdhouse. It's going in a pile to use at a later date if I need to or want to. And I'm just auditioning to see where on this canvas I want. Picking out a sentiment. Love builds a happy home. Thinking I'm good. Now I'm going to work on the orientation of the one for the door hanger. And once again, just removing what you don't want. You're cutting out those things that you don't want. Remember, you don't have to use the napkin as it is. You are the artist. You get to decide what part or parts of this you wish to have. This one says there's no place like home. I thought that would be nice on a door. So I grabbed this, I believe it's called layered wallpaper stencil, and I'm using my thickened gesso through the stencil and just applying it to the background. Loving all that texture. So while that's off to the side drying, I'm deciding, I'm going to just try putting yellow. So this is my Naples yellow and yellow oxide with white gesso, and I'm just getting a mottled soft yellow background. So here I'm going to test out my theory. I didn't know if this color would look good. Using the plastic wrap, getting some interesting marks. But I'm testing out different color backgrounds with these other projects. And I learned that pretty much anything goes. It all worked. So one napkin, lots of different backgrounds. I got lots of colors in there and lots of interest. It's a small piece and it's going to be covered by a fairly large focal image. So you're not going to see a whole lot of this. But that doesn't mean I can't have fun playing with it. Loving how the yellow looks with that background. Now, because it says love builds a happy home, I thought, I'm going to stencil on some hearts into the background. And this is the cake and cookie stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. And I'll put a link to it and the other stencil I used in the description box. So I'm just putting these happy little hearts all over the place. Just another design feature, another bit of interest. Tying everything together. Edging it with the yellow oxide. And figuring out the final placement. I might have one idea and sometimes that idea stays the same, and here I'm editing out. I'm taking out this one birdhouse. I'm going to put 3 birdhouses and have a little bit more of the background showing. A coat of fluid matte medium and decoupaging the napkin focal image down. And as you can see, the yellow background, fairly light, really did not mute the color. So that works well as a background. So the blue worked, the yellow's working. Now I printed my sentiment out on tissue paper. I taped the tissue paper to a copy paper and then put it through my printer. Here I'm just editing out, scratching out some excess that's just bothering me. And the secret with the tissue paper to get it to go completely translucent is to put lots of matte medium underneath and lots of matte medium on top. And when you have a very light background, it blends a lot better than if this was a darker background. But you can see it just went perfectly clear. Grabbing some brown and just edging it a little bit darker to frame this little fridge magnet. And a little bit of splatter. Loving that one as well. Doing a little bit of shading on the hearts, just adding those little bit of details. It all makes for one completed page. Just adding a little bit of shading, not much. Just wanted the focal image to pop a little bit more from the background. So now we have project number 2. Loving this one as well. So to the door hangers, so I love the colors of a page that I had done earlier. And again, when I tried it on there, I thought, okay, that goes. So this is kind of, it's deep violet and gesso, I think with a little bit of quinacridone magenta in there that kind of goes purple. And I'm getting a very model background. I want a very soft background, and I'm putting white along the bottom. That's where the flowers are, and I really want them to shine through. So I don't want the purple to shine through and dull them. So that's a trick you can do if you want to colorize your background first. And I'm just rubbing the makeup sponge over top. And I decide I'm going to put the sentiment on top of the flowers at the bottom. And I'm rubbing the deep violet with the makeup sponge on the textured part just to bring it out and add that little pop of color, similar to the effect that you get when you splatter. Just adds a little bit of color in there. So I'm loving how this brings out the purples that are in this napkin art. And decoupaging it down. Now there's texture there, and I have not had a problem with putting texture paste underneath a stencil, but you do have to be gentle. Remember, the napkin becomes very fragile when it's wet, and it's more likely to rip when you've got those sharp edges of the texture paste or extra thick gesso. Cutting off the excess, and you know I'm saving those. Wrapping it around the edges. And I did printed this one out on tissue paper as well, because I want it to go translucent. I don't want that white there. But if you can't print out on tissue paper, or all you have is on copy paper, that's fine too. It's just a slightly different look. It's not better or worse, it's just different. So I cut off some of the excess and some matte medium to decoupage it down. This one was giving me a bit of a battle. Love how that looks. I think this would make a lovely door hanger. So we've had a blue background, a purple background, and a yellow background. Just edging this with some of the deep violet. And I believe I come back and edge with black as well. But you'll see in the close-ups at the end of the video. Now on the back of this, I've put a coat of black gesso, and I'll go touch it up anywhere that there's paint. I've just found that it's easier to paint the back first, less chance of wrecking your front. And here is project 4, which is another fridge magnet. Now, if you've counted bird houses, the bird sections, I've used all 4 of them. But what I have are these flowers, little pieces of these flowers. So I am just going to decoupage them all down to cover this 4x4 mini canvas. Now, if I didn't quite have enough, I could have just taken some paint and filled in any gaps if there was some, but I actually had exactly enough. And that, what you saw there, was all that was left. This is hand cut blossom, and I decided I'm just going to stencil through this with black acrylic paint. I'm going for bold and black. Put it kind of as an angle. I got a little bit messy there. So I decided, I'm just going to add some detail. I grabbed my fine line bottle and I'm just outlining these very loosely. I'm not trying to be perfect. I can't. So I just embrace. It's a hand cut blossom. It's supposed to look like it's hand cut. So it's not going to be so precise. And you can see where I kind of made a mess there. But when I put this on, it cleans it all up. So I hope you enjoyed this video showing you 4 ways you can use the same napkin. Because lots of times you end up with pieces left over. Now I use the sentiment from my short and sweet sentiment pack, and I use this on a clear Avery sticker. So I'm just pushing it down. Once I varnish this, it will disappear. So there's the napkin, and there are the 4 lovely home decor pieces that I created out of that one napkin. Here are some close-ups of the finished project. I hope you enjoyed this. Give me a thumbs up. Check out the affiliate links in the description box. Follow me on Instagram @CreativeKatie. Bye for now.